Welcome to the GMAT Strategy Podcast. You're here because you believe there's a better way to study for the GMAT, and so do we. We created the GMAT strategy to maximize your results and minimize your efforts so you can get to the fun parts about business school and life as quickly as possible. My name is Isaac Puglia, and I've been teaching GMAT classes and tutoring privately for the GMAT for over a decade, and I've helped thousands of students get into the business schools of their choice. I'm excited to be a part of your MBA journey since we all at TGS believe that our world can benefit from the best possible business leaders that we can find. If this show is bringing you value, please share it with your friends and family who are studying so that together we can make this process as easy and as painless as it can possibly be. Let's go. Today, let's talk about how to choose the best order for you to take the sections of the GMAT. So if you're brand new to the exam, what is this? Why are we even talking about it? There's 3 sections on the exam: quant, verbal, and data insights. And we've got specific episodes on the details behind all of those sections elsewhere in the feed if you want to search. But for now, I'm just going to assume that you're not completely brand new to the process and you understand a little bit about the intricacies of those sections. But the reason it's important to talk about the order you can take them is that's one of the very first decisions you're going to be asked to make on test day. So when you start the exam, and we've got a full episode on all the steps you're going to go through, whether you're taking the online exam or whether you're taking the in-person exam. So if you're wondering, like, what does the whole experience look like from end to end, we'll link that for you below. But the short version is you're going to check in at the test center or at your home, and then the exam is going to begin on the computer, and the rest is going to be very familiar from your practice test. But right at the beginning, you're going to be asked, what order do you want to see the sections in? And you can choose any order you want. So you can do quant first, you could do verbal first, you could do DI first, you could do DI first and verbal second, you could do DI first and quant second. And so if you've been studying your combinations problems, you can do the math and figure out that there's a decent number of options that you could take the exam in. And I won't spoil that question for you if you want to give it a little go there. But the situation is further complicated by the fact that there is one 10-minute break, and you can take that between the first and second section, or you can take it between the second and third section. And so that increases the number of potential options. And so with all those options, it's understandable that people would get confused. And I get asked about this a lot every single year. What order should I take it in? How should I think about section order? Does section order matter? Should I even be worrying about it? Should I just forget about it? So let's answer all those questions right now. Now, perhaps obviously the ideal thing would be if you could very quickly run an experiment on yourself where you could try out every single order that's possible for the exam, collect data on multiple iterations of each, see your performance without any other variables changing, and make a peer-reviewed double-blind decision about what is the optimal order for you. But that's totally impractical for a ton of reasons for basically everyone. And so probably the most important key to understand about choosing your section order is GMAT did the next best thing to what I was just talking about, which is they ran an experiment on many data points. I think it was over 10,000 GMAT exams with different orders. And the results were interesting because the results showed that there was no statistically significant advantage or disadvantage to any of the orders that you could take the exam in. So it's essentially random in terms of how much the section order affects your ultimate score, according to the data. Like if you could scale it out and take the exam a ton of times, there would be basically no effect from the order itself. So there's a lot of important takeaways there that we've discussed in other episodes, such as like your skills are the main driver of your score. I don't think anybody's going to be super surprised by that, but it's important to state so that you don't get distracted by just potential distractions out there on the internet of people somehow trying to convince you that it's not about your skills. But your skills, the surprising thing is that your skills include more than just like being great at math and being great at reading and being great at data. And that part is super confusing. And so that's why we've got the video on our website about how to handle the scoring algorithm well and like some of the counterintuitive aspects of that, because the GMAT is quite different from other tests you've taken in the past. And that'll all be linked for you below in the description. It's all free. So that brings us back to why are we even discussing this? Like, is it a non-issue? Is it a non-discussion? And I think that's a little bit too strong of an assessment. So GMAT has the data. That's important. it's not going to be the determining factor in your success. The section order, that's not going to be the thing that makes or breaks your performance on test day. But even if it doesn't have a statistically significant effect, and even if it doesn't change your skill set that really drives the results, I think there is a psychological advantage to taking the exam in an order that feels right to you, or that you just feel is like appropriate for the situation. So I think it warrants a little bit of discussion. So the interesting thing about psychological factors is they do affect performance. There's been study about confidence and how that affects people's performance in general, not necessarily on the GMAT, but like the GMAT is a close enough analog to what's in those studies. For example, there's like really interesting psychological studies done with real GRE questions, and those are super interesting. Like there's one about mindfulness meditation helping people's reading comprehension performance. And it's kind of like, whoa, like how does that work? And I think the truth is like we just don't know enough about how the brain works and how human beings work to know like why that's happening. But it is like an interesting statistically observable effect. And so the point I'm making there is not that you should do mindfulness meditation, although it might be worth considering depending on your situation. The point I'm making there is psychological factors can affect our performance. And I think most of us have like good anecdotal evidence, meaning like our own personal experience would support that assertion. Like when you're feeling it, sometimes you can get a better performance out of yourself than if you're like overthinking things or feeling like uptight or not feeling it. Meaning like I don't feel like playing basketball today. Well, I may not perform as well. Or I'm really feeling great today and I go in there and I have an amazing performance in the sport. Like a lot of us have had that kind of experience. Maybe it's not a sport, but you get what I'm saying. So I think the key thing here is how do you choose the section order that gives you the biggest psychological advantage? Because again, according to the data, there's no real statistical advantage, which is kind of interesting. So if I had to sum it all up, and I had only 2 seconds to tell you what you needed to do, I would say just pick the order that you feel good about. But that might take a little bit of experimentation, and there is a little bit of additional advice I can give you that'll probably be helpful. So I'm not going to go crazy long on this, but I am going to give you some advice from my just vast experience at this point, helping people with this thing. And I really hope it's going to help you out. So there's basically 3 different ways that I think you could think about section order. The first is start with your strength. And I think a lot of people like starting with their strength. It's like an energy lift at the beginning of the test. You feel solid as you get into the first few questions. If you feel anxious about a certain section, sometimes putting that section later in the exam and starting with a strength can help you approach a section that's harder for you when you're more like quote unquote warmed up or like feeling good. Like you're like, okay, I'm kind of in the zone. I got that first section out of the way. I'm feeling strong. I'm feeling sturdy and I'm ready to like take on this thing that I'm a little worried about. I think a lot of people are going to perform their best, feel their best when you organize the test that way. So I would encourage you to just think about it. And then the good news is you can run like 3 experiments. If you totally run 3 experiments, you're probably going to take at least 3 practice exams before you take your official exam. And so feel free to engage at least with these 3 things that I'm describing. Now, you might end up thinking you starting with your strength is going to be great. And then you might do that. And you might be like, oh, wow, actually, that was like way worse than I thought it was going to be. And you probably won't know until you try it out. So yeah, maybe you won't have time to test like every single iteration, but you could probably test starting with your strength and seeing how that feels. And that'll help you make good determinations. Now, the flip side of that might be kind of obvious, but it's the like get the bad stuff out of the way first approach. So like just putting the scariest section first, like, okay, I'm just eating my vegetables here, taking my medicine before I have dessert kind of approach. Some people just like that. They're going into the test pumped up. They're feeling fierce. They're like, all right, bring it on. But just give me the tough stuff right now. I just want to get this done. And then I'll cruise through the rest of the test. And I think a lot of people just feel a little lighter after getting that first section out of the way. They don't want that hard section hanging over them at any point. They want to just kind of like get it done. And again, I think there's a lot of value there. And you just got to figure out, is that better for you? Does that make you feel better than the strength approach? Or does that make you feel worse? And again, you might not know till you try it out. So I'd encourage you at least to try those. And then there's also the like medium/neutral section first. where it's like neither the thing I'm feeling great about nor the thing I'm feeling bad about. And I think that that can be a good like anti-anxiety push. Test anxiety is a super real thing, and people are affected by it to a wide variety of degrees. And so I don't want to pretend that changing your section order is potentially going to have a major impact on your testing anxiety. It certainly could, but I think most psychological professionals would probably say like, okay, that's worth experimenting with, but like that's probably not going to solve like a major anxiety issue. But let's be honest, if you're trying to solve a big problem like serious test anxiety, like even a 1% improvement is welcome. So that's how I like to think about this when I'm coaching people who are just like, I can tell they're feeling uptight about taking the exam and they're not feeling loose. And I think the reason that the sort of like starting with the medium or neutral section where you're kind of like whatever about it, it's neither a strength nor a weakness, is is that you're not looping on starting with your strength and feeling like you need to do well at the very beginning of the exam. That's kind of like this weird anti-loop that anxiety can put us in, where we're overthinking the strength area. Like, oh, if I start with my strength, like again, you might actually try the first experiment I was talking through, like starting with your strength, and then you might be like, oh my gosh, I got to do well on this. I can't do badly on this. Oh man, I know I just messed up that last question. Like I gotta regroup here. Like this isn't going very well, and that can like domino through the whole exam. And for some people, it's better to just be like, okay, this is my neutral section. I wasn't expecting it to go perfectly. It's okay that I missed that question a couple minutes ago. It's all good. I know that one question isn't going to make or break my performance here. I got to just push through and get this thing done. Like that mindset can be super, super helpful. And if you've suffered from the kind of stress that I'm talking about with test anxiety, then I think you could probably relate to a good amount of that. The flip side of that, of course, is that you don't need to start with your weaker section and be like dreading that the whole like 48 hours or week or 2 weeks leading up to the exam. Like, oh man, it's going to hit so hard. I know it's not going to go well, or like you get into the section and number one is really tough or number two is really tough. And you start thinking like, man, I know I shouldn't have started with this hard section. Like this is going to go badly. I know this day is going to be bad. Look, we should all practice like getting ourselves out of those counterproductive mental loops, because usually thinking like that doesn't help our performance. But let's be honest, most of us can't control the thoughts that come into our mind. And so the next best thing is like learning how to manage those thoughts, or like learning how to shift our attention from those negative thoughts to other things. And there's a whole ton of literature out there about that. And I want to be clear, like none of this is psychiatric or medical advice. I'm not qualified or licensed to give that type of advice from a legal perspective. Having said that, I have coached a lot of people through this, and anecdotally, not double blind, peer reviewed stuff. Well, I guess, not peer reviewed in the scientific sense. Obviously, I have my peers at TGS review my stuff. Well, maybe it's not obvious. Everybody at TGS fact checks everybody else all the time. Like we want to be right. We always want to tell you the right thing. We always want to give you the right advice, because I just want to be super real with all of you. Like there's a lot of other stuff all of us could be doing. And we are here doing this because we feel like helping you become successful matters. And that's a whole long story. But basically, having more successful people in the world really helps the world. Like if you look at the science, you look at the documentation, you study economic theory, not just some self-help books or like what the Dalai Lama said or something. No disrespect to the Dalai Lama, but like, yeah, I'm sure there's tons of stuff attributed to the Dalai Lama that he probably never even said anyway. So like, anyway, but there's sometimes you see these quotes floating around like the world doesn't need more successful people. I think that's completely backwards. I think we need way more successful people. And the more people who are successful, who have agency, who can do the things that they want to do, the more giving society that you have. And then this is like, just so data backed as to be like almost irrefutable. I'm sure there's people out there who want to argue against anything, no matter what, just for the sake of arguing. But like, yeah, I mean, do your own research on that. But that's why we're here. And sorry for the long aside, but I guess since it came up, it's worth being transparent with you about that. That we are constantly fact checking everything that we do. And we have automated fact checking, we have human fact checking, we have all the above, like everything you can imagine we're doing. And still sometimes we'll be wrong. Just to be fair, we're all human here. We're not perfect. And so we have feedback forms in like every piece of content we put out. You should aggressively see us, sorry, you should see us aggressively seeking feedback at every point. Like if anything is off, let us know. We will definitely make adjustments. But all that to say is, even though this is potentially like a side quest topic, like, yeah, it's probably, again, not the biggest thing that's going to affect you. Even if you are that anxious person, giving you like a 2% advantage on the exam is actually really meaningful to us, because like everybody at TGS really struggled with the exam. We only hire people who know the struggle, because that's really, really important, that they can relate to what the struggle type people go through. I know a lot of you are going to listen to this and study for 2 weeks and get like a 99th percentile score, and that's awesome. That's amazing. That's super cool. Much respect. No disrespect to that. But that's not the majority of people. And that wasn't me. Like, I struggled with this thing a ton. It definitely affected my own belief in myself. It affected my self-worth. I got like really beat down. And I'll have some resources for you later in the episode if that's the situation you're in right now. But suffice to say, if this podcast had existed and I had had access to the advice that we've given you over the years here, then I would have had success way, way faster. And I would have been able to do more cool stuff than what I've already done by this point in my life. And that's what I want for you. That's what I want for you, because I know that the more successful you get, the more cool stuff you're going to do. Like, it's so unusual for people to become super, super successful and not give back. That's just comically unusual. But the popular narrative in society of like how successful people get demonized is just like, yeah, I don't know. I guess it just sells a lot of theater tickets or something. I mean, I haven't looked into the entertainment industry. I don't know what the story is behind that. So maybe one of you in the entertainment industry can enlighten me on why that narrative's so popular. But yeah, I guess maybe it's like an underdog thing or something. But in reality, like that's just what happens in the movies. Like, we all know that most of the time reality is not like what happens in the movies. But yeah, if you're living in that world, don't let me burst your bubble. You know what I mean? So back to the subject at hand. And again, sorry for the long aside, but we do need to voice how we run the business, because other people like to try to like say bad things about us and try to write our story for us. And yeah, if all of you go out in the world, if you haven't experienced this already, then you might end up competing with people, or they might end up believing that you're trying to compete with them, whether you are or not. And they might do really mean stuff. They might do really mean stuff. And that is sometimes the price of doing business and of helping other people and being awesome and being very righteous. And so sometimes you got to tell your own story so that there's a record of truth in the world, and that these other like hateful people don't tell your story for you, because usually they're telling the wrong story, and they're telling stuff that's really untrue, and that's not okay. So I apologize if that was off topic. Back to section order. So we got 3 different experiments you can run. Start with your strength, see how that goes for you. Start with your weakness, see how that goes for you, see how it feels. Check the results. Did it affect the results, whether psychologically or otherwise? Or start with the neutral section. And at least you'll be able to run those experiments. The break after the first section versus after the third section, I think you'll figure out very, very quickly. Some people just like taking the break before a specific section because of fatigue. And again, like after maybe 2-3 practice tests, you'll probably figure that out. And it probably won't be like a big question anymore. Like, it'll be obvious to you. That would be my guess. But if you do have questions, or you're getting stuck with this and you don't have anyone to reach out to about this, because you don't have like people around you who have helped you with this thing or have gone down the path before you, then our contact page is linked in the description of, I think, every piece of content we've ever put out. So feel free to DM us or email us, or you can even text us now if you want. But no promises that we're going to keep the texting service open forever. But yeah, just it's there right now if you want it. So that's the meat of how to choose good section order. I'm going to just end with a couple small considerations. Some people don't realize there's only one break. I've actually talked to a good number of people this year already who were taking their practice tests with a 10-minute break between all 3 sections. And so let's just nip that one in the bud. That does not exist unless you have a specific accommodation from GMAT that you would have had to apply for and be granted by them. That gives you an extra break. Some people do get granted that accommodation for a variety of reasons. And if you've had accommodations for your testing in the past because of learning differences or anything else, then I highly recommend you check out the accommodations page on MBA.com. It's not difficult to find, and apply for accommodations. They're there to make the playing field more level. But if you don't have those accommodations and you haven't specifically applied for them, there's only one break. There's only one 10-minute break. Okay. So practice your practice tests using that one 10-minute break official time consideration. Otherwise, you might be a little unprepared for test day, and that can really throw you off. So that's just like quick tip number one. Quick tip number two is fatigue often matters on this exam. It's shorter than it used to be. I've talked about that a lot in the past, but it's still pretty intense. Like the time pressure can be intense, the questions can be intense, the stress can be intense. And we can have the debate of whether our bodies were created or evolved to like deal with sitting in front of a computer and answering really hard, gnarly reasoning questions for 2.5 hours, 3 hours straight. But I think most people would agree that that is not really the purpose of the human body. And so it can feel a little bit unnatural. And so sometimes we get tired. So some considerations about fatigue. If you have one section that's really strong and like carries the others for you, like it's much higher than the other sections and it has a larger impact on the 3-digit score, that could be a reason to do that section first or second, either when like second so you're a little warmed up, or first so you're fresh. And that's because like if I'm getting like a 88 in verbal and like a 78 in quant and a 78 in DI, I'm going to really want to protect that 88 in verbal. I'm going to want to maximize the odds that I could get an 88 or 89 in verbal, because even a small swing in my verbal performance would have a comparatively large effect on the 3-digit score. Or you might want to take that super strong, like carrying the whole team section right after your break. So those are some considerations about fatigue. And I would practice that in my practice tests. I would prioritize practicing that in my practice tests over the 3 considerations I said before, if you have like one of those quote unquote standout sections. A lot of us have like 1 or 2 strength sections, but they're not like 30 to 50% higher than the other sections. You know what I mean? So this is really the consideration only if you're in that situation where you have one section that has a majorly outsized impact on your score. So it's just worth thinking about. Again, you don't want to overthink it. You don't want to obsess about this. It's unlikely to be the deal breaker in your score, but it can help. And if all it takes is listening to a quick podcast and making this podcast for you as well as we can, and that helps you even 2% with your GMAT performance on test day, that's super worth it for all the reasons I already spoke about. So the last consideration, last kind of like quick hitter tip, is the scoring algorithm. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. And there's some interesting information out there that I've seen a lot of people push, that the way the algorithm works is that your performance on the previous section affects the difficulty level of the question that your next section begins with. So let me try to break that down. Let's say you start with quant and you have a really good performance in quant, and then your next section is verbal. That first question of the verbal section might be a little bit harder than if you had a bad performance in quant on the first section. Okay. And there is actually some truth to that, which is kind of interesting. Now, GMAC doesn't publish the exact specifics of how the algorithm works, but if you do enough digging, you can somewhat validate that. But the problem is the conclusions that people draw from that are wildly inaccurate in my experience. So I just want to do a little bit of myth busting here. The way that works has such a small effect. It has such a minuscule effect on the net result of your exam that it's just a total waste of energy trying to optimize that. Because what I've seen end up happening is people kind of sell themselves on like, oh, I need every advantage I can get. Let me make sure that I get like a hard question at the beginning of verbal because, you know, someone published this data that's totally unverifiable from only their program that has only their unofficial practice questions and practice tests in it. And they're like now claiming that they have some hack on section order. I mean, the data just doesn't bear that out. The objectively verifiable data does not bear that out. Again, I mentioned the GMAC study. They already ran those numbers. There's no statistical advantage to doing it. And so what happens is you start like overthinking the beginning of a section. You start overthinking the end of a section. You start trying to over optimize what you're doing from a high level instead of just being good and focusing on getting the questions you know how to do, focusing on letting go of the questions you don't know how to do, focusing on solid time management, focusing on not leaving questions blank because there's a major penalty for that. Like all that stuff about the scoring algorithm, you should understand, but you shouldn't be over indexing on that unless it's clearly the limiting factor in your score, which for most people it's not, but for a good number of people it is. And again, the video's on the website for you there to kind of shed light on that. It doesn't translate well to the podcast. So again, like, even though there is some truth to the first question of the next section is affected by my performance in the previous section, like it's like section adaptive, quote unquote, the rest of the exam is too unpredictable for that to be controllable for most students. And it ends up being a distraction rather than an advantage. And I've found that ends up actually hurting people's performance. In fact, a couple years ago when those articles were getting pushed like really, really hard, we had a ton of people come into our program who were failing with the other program, partially because they were overthinking that. To be clear, like that was another provider's program, not ours. And then they were coming into our program and having success, which we specialize in. And I'll talk more about that in a sec. But yeah, that was a really scary situation. So I just don't want you to get into that, even though perhaps obviously like it could theoretically help our business if everybody suffered from that and we like let all the disinformation out there that other people push just like be what it is and like never publish podcasts. Like that would actually probably help our quote unquote top line. But again, that's not the only reason we're here. Like we want TGS to be viable because we think it's a positive force in the world. But having it be a positive force in the world is the ultimate aim of the company. And I know that's quite unusual and like that's legally verifiable and all that stuff if you want to fact check us on that. But I'm not going to go down that path right now because it's such a different topic. But yeah, basically you can stress test all my claims on the podcasts and I believe they'll hold up. I'm in this to build your trust over the long term. That's why you rarely hear me pitch our products. And yeah, so anyway, they're there for you if you want them, and I'll talk about those in just a second. So that's the full rundown. That's like more than you need to know about section order and hopefully more than enough for you to make a good decision and then just refocus on the things that are actually going to move your result. Because the key thing you want to focus on is what's the constraint. Most systems in business and in life will grow to the extent of the one biggest constraint in that system. And then if you unlock that one constraint, the whole system will generally grow. That tends to be the case. Not true 100% of the time, but it's very true of the GMAT. And so if choosing the section order is a constraint for you, hopefully we've removed that constraint today and you can focus on stuff like I'm not good enough at roots questions, or I'm not good enough at managing time, or I'm not good enough at data insights. And if you can focus good, positive energy on constraints, you should have success if you can stick it out for long enough to see those seeds grow. Like I say in the webinar, if you check that out on the website, like there's no such thing as a magic wand that's going to instantly transform your GMAT score with no effort and no energy. But if you're willing to invest effort and energy, then we have done our best to give you as many tools as we can possibly give you to make that energy pay off for you. So finally getting to if you are struggling and you're not seeing the results that you want to see with your current provider or your current approach to studying, or you're not seeing those results fast enough or as fast as you would like them, we do specialize in turning those situations around. That was the situation I was in. I worked with several providers back when I was in your shoes. None of them got me results. My score went down multiple times, if you can believe that, despite me working extremely hard, by the way. Effort was not the issue in my situation. I had a full-time job. I was still studying over 30 hours a week, sometimes even more than that. And I deleted social life. I deleted, all that stuff. And my score was going down. And there was no service like what we have at TGS to help me with that. I had to piece it all together myself. And that was super, super painful. So we do offer services and products to help, especially if you are in those situations. Now, if you're just starting out and you like our approach, then you're welcome to reach out and see if any of our programs are a good fit for you. So the way that works is you just head to the website and check out the free presentation I was just telling you about. Make sure that our approach is not like, definitely not a fit for you because we don't want that. We don't want to waste anybody's time. And then on that page below the video, you'll be able to book a call with us if you want to speak with us live. We'll ask you to share a little bit about your situation, and then we'll jump on the call. We'll take a look at your situation, and we'll see if our programs or our products could be a good fit for you. Our programs and products are not a good fit for everybody. And it's really important to us that we do the ethical thing and not like try to sell you something you don't need. We're really passionate about that. Like I've said many times, we're here to help. And if any of those things sound like a good fit for you, then you can decide to do it or not. And either way, we will actually help you optimize your existing study plan for free, whether you decide to work with us at all or not. And we're really committed to that. We've done a lot of work behind the scenes to continue to offer that like basically like free service for you and to never do the like crappy salesy crap, any of that. We've just completely done away with that because yeah, we're just trying to treat other people the way we want to be treated. So if that sounds good, just head to the website, check that out, or you can message us on the contact page if you have questions about that. And if that doesn't sound good, that's totally cool. No worries at all. If everything you're doing is working out great and you're getting the results that you want to see, then I'm really, really happy about that. In the meantime, this is a regular show, so if it's helpful for you, please subscribe, and if not, it's all good. And at the very minimum, everybody, please just stay positive and stay consistent with your studies. You can do it. Talk to you all soon.